3 new commanders were just announced in Rise of Kingdoms, so in this video, we're going to go over how I think they're going to work and where I think you might unlock them. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms. And just this morning, they announced 3 new commanders, 2 of whom will be ranged, which you see on your screen. Margaret and Babur, and then a 3rd commander, which is really unusual. They are a leadership commander, Heraclius. Now, what I'm wondering about this is where are you going to unlock these commanders from, and exactly how are they going to work, and what does this mean for how you should prepare moving forward for new commanders in Rise of Kingdoms? And let me just give a hot take really quick before I get into the ranged combat right over here, which is that since we know ranged combat commanders are coming into the game, doesn't it stand to reason that ranged equipment could soon follow? So what does this mean if Chisgule Gaming thinks that new ranged commanders could mean new ranged equipment coming very soon? I think you should consider saving your crystal keys. Now, I recently spent a ton of crystal keys, which might have been a mistake in some ways, but I did want the materials to go craft things right away. However, we don't yet know what materials ranged commanders might use for their equipment, and we can assume that ranged equipment will be a thing. The developers have said as much in previous update notes. So we've got these 2 commanders, both ranged commanders, and you might want as much as 2 sets of ranged equipment. Now, why would that be the case? So I know I've gone way off into the weeds before I've even revealed what information the developers have shared. And the reason I'm doing that is that actually they didn't share too much information about these commanders other than their historical significance. So I've got that historical significance up on the screen over here. And I guess I can read this very briefly and then just butcher the pronunciations of everything as I do this. Okay. But the forefather of the Mughals, God, I could just hear Abe in my head saying Muggles over and over. Babur, the ranged commander, the founder of the Mughal Empire. I swear I've got to be mispronouncing that. He was the eldest son of Umar Shah. I feel terrible. Mirza, the then ruler of Fergana, and the descendant of Timur, founder of the Timurid Empire. Okay. And then you've got the High Queen of the North, Margaret, who's going to be a ranged commander as well. Starting from the late 1380s, Queen Margaret reigned over the kingdoms of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, including Finland at the time, and later united those possessions into the Kalmar Union. She's hailed as one of the most important figures of the Middle Ages and one of Europe's first and greatest queen regents. And then you've got the first Basilius, Heraclius, a leadership-type commander, the first Byzantine emperor of the Heraclian dynasty in 1608 alongside his father, then the Exarch of Africa. He rebelled against the tyrannical emperor Phocas? I don't know, man. In 1610, he defeated him and became the new emperor. All right, so now that I've butchered the pronunciation of everything, let's just get back to the in-game significance, because this is all the developers have given us. Ranged commanders is something we actually know a fair amount about because of the Heroic Anthem power-up version of KVK, where there is the engineering talent tree. Do you remember the engineering talent tree? Do you remember what those commanders did? Great news. I've got videos about that. Card will be up in the top, but let me pull some of those talents for you now. This is the engineering talent tree. I've got one of the talents highlighted, but this was with Torgny and Wafura. You got them as commanders when you enter into the power-up version of KVK. This is a Heroic Anthem KVK format. This is KVK Season 4 and beyond. So my guess is that these are going to be siege-based commanders based on the engineering talent tree. Now, they could go in a completely different direction and say, oh, any troop type can work with ranged, but I think the developers have been trying to make ranged more of a thing anyways, and siege units more of a thing anyways. So it just makes sense to combine them together, drop in commanders that are probably shockingly powerful, and make siege units relevant again. Now, I made a video about this a long time ago saying, hey, siege units are going to be super relevant, and it was not a popular video, but now it's here, and the predictions were true. So what do the talents do? One thing that you'll notice is that this is going to significantly boost siege unit stats. Every single one of these talent points on the tree that's not a major talent, we'll call them minor because they have no descriptions. They just give you a little bit of stats. They're all giving siege stats. So the engineering tree is a siege unit tree, and I can only assume that your 2 new ranged commanders will have this talent tree. Now, in addition to giving a bunch of health, it's also going to give siege units a bunch of march speed, which I feel like is really mandatory. They're so damn slow. 15% for 3 talent points is better than you can get anywhere else. Keep in mind, in like the infantry talent tree, and infantry are damn slow, you spend 3 talent points for 6% of march speed. So 3 talent points over here for 15% is pretty damn good. The thing that I do remember when we evaluated this together in my live streams and also in my videos is that the engineering talent tree was shockingly oriented around defensive capabilities. And my impression of what you want for a ranged commander is for them to be absolutely insane with ranged damage. So like, if nobody hits you, then you don't need defense, and you don't need health, and you don't need skill damage taken reduction, and you don't need counterattack damage, because if nobody connects with you, and you're playing your ranged tower very defensively, you just wreck people from afar. So the tree is very much oriented around actually getting into physical combat that you shouldn't get into with a ranged commander, but I think realistically you will. You at least want to avoid getting into that. So this reduces skill damage taken by 20%. I mean, for 4 talent points, that's insane. That's better than you can get pretty much anywhere. I mean, they're giving as many stat boosts in the engineering tree, at least in the power-up version of KVK, as they do for like the garrison tree, which talent trees that are heavily constrained to one activity always give disproportionately high stats. So all that to say, it seems like you probably can specialize very deeply into doing siege unit ranged combat if the engineering tree does in fact apply to these 2 new commanders. The top talent in the tree, by the way, is Forbearance, increases damage dealt by the next ranged normal attack by 50% for every 5 seconds once the battle begins. Worded kind of weirdly, but I took this screenshot a long time ago, so maybe they changed this. But increases the damage dealt by the next ranged normal attack by 50% for every 5 seconds once the battle begins. I feel like I'd just say every 5 seconds, your next normal attack does 50% more damage. But whatever. So lots of damage, and also lots of damage mitigation to be found in the engineering talent tree. Now, if these 2 new ranged commanders do what I think, a ton of siege stats, boosting ranged combat effectiveness, maybe some march speed for siege units, because you probably could expect that, probably some defense and health, and even though defensive stats are not exactly what you want, you're probably going to get some of those anyways. I think that it is entirely possible that people who want to specialize in ranged combat will actually not pair these 2 commanders together. They will split them up, assuming they have the engineering talent tree, so that you could have 2 marches doing ranged combat with engineering talents, and all of a sudden ranged combat, if you thought it was not dangerous before, could be I think very dangerous and very powerful. So where do I think these commanders are going to come from? My guess is that because you have 2 of them, they're coming from the Mightiest Governor and the Wheel of Fortune. Now, which will go where is hard to say. The other thing that's a little weird about that is that historically, the Mightiest Governor commander is really good for rallying or really good for garrisoning. I don't think that either of these ranged commanders is going to be good for either of those things. I mean, they could break the mold here and just be like, hey, we got a new category. We can do whatever the hell we want. And also, where do they fall into the Mightiest Governor cycle, if that's true? Does this mean that we'll have, you know, the cycles we have now, cavalry, infantry, archer, leadership, and then a range cycle? Is that how that's going to go? That would have the effect of slowing down sort of the rate with which you can get the commander you wanted, which the developers did say they wanted to kind of slow down the entry of new commanders. I don't know. But what I do think is that even though I'm not sure how they fit into Mightiest Governor, that's probably where they put those 2 commanders, which leaves us with something kind of funky. Which is that where does the leadership commander go? Heraclius is your new leadership type commander. And I kind of wonder if they don't like shoehorn him in anyways to the Mightiest Governor and Wheel of Fortune. I don't know. He's a leadership type commander, and I wonder what he's going to do. The developers have said that they think city defense is really pretty disadvantaged at the moment. So it's possible that this new leadership commander is really good for city defense. It's also possible that we're getting a new, really strong commander to pair with Trajan in the open field, which would be pretty dope. So I'm not quite sure, but when they say leadership type commander, often what that means is a mixed troop benefit. You've seen this on YSS. If you have multiple troop types, you get big benefits. We've seen this with Honda Tarakatsu, where on his 4th skill, you need to have mixed troops in order to get special benefits. We've even seen this on the Onion Helmet himself. That is Suleiman, which, like, what a completely irrelevant commander he was in this game, which is shocking because he was not a irrelevant historical figure, which is why they put him in the game. So will this new leadership type commander be super relevant? I think that leadership type commanders don't have an amazing track record in some ways, based purely off of Suleiman and Charlemagne. Charlemagne's leadership, right? Isn't he leadership? Anyways, I think that Heraclius is likely to be a city defense commander, which would mean that you probably don't need to get him. But where would he even come from if our Wheel of Fortune and Mightiest Governor are already claimed? Now, they could just throw multiple commanders into the Wheel of Fortune at the same time. They could just throw multiple commanders into the Mightiest Governor at the same time. It is possible. But even if they did that, he's leadership, not ranged. So are they going to combine the ranged commanders with the leadership cycles for a while? It is possible that they could go that route. Or they could have a separate event series, and in that event series, you unlock commanders. That is also a possibility. So if they had a separate event series, it could be that the ranged commanders come from the separate event series, or it could be that the leadership commander fits into that separate event series. Typically, when we see new commanders outside of Mightiest Governor and Wheel of Fortune, it's because we have a new civilization coming into the game, and then they're going to be available in gold keys. But do I think that Heraclius is a gold key commander? I mean, it's possible, but I think the chances are low. But given that it is possible, and that we're at this strange moment where we don't really know where these commanders are going to drop, I would save your gold keys. It couldn't hurt to save your gold keys unless you're about to fight tomorrow in some new battle. I would wait and see maybe he comes in gold keys. So what have we figured out in this video so far? 2 new ranged commanders, maybe save your crystal keys, depending on where that equipment comes from, and if it uses even the same materials for ranged commanders as it does the commanders we already have. Saving your crystal keys could make sense because they could drop the patterns for that into there, but they haven't said they're dropping the patterns and equipment yet. And it isn't even in the latest patch notes. And then the weirdness about a leadership type commander is generally, like, which of the 3 troop types are you going to specialize in? Infantry, archers, or cavalry? And a lot of that will depend on who is Heraclius going to be good with. Is he going to be on your city wall? And if he is on your city wall, I think the infantry gear is actually really insane. The leadership spec on the infantry gear is really quite good compared to other options you have. That could be really good. But if he is a city defense commander, then, like, most people don't even need to worry about him. But if he's really good like Trajan, then he could be the sort of commander that, depending on who you talk to, everybody needs to go get. Or it could be a, meta-defining commander in Ark of Osiris, like Trajan was. Or not. I don't know. I'm eager for what the developers will say in the coming days. And if you have any thoughts or predictions, especially around where will we unlock these commanders, definitely let me know down below in the comments. I'll be looking for that. If you're looking for more information about the patch I just referenced coming very soon, I don't think they set a date, card will be in the end screen where they talked about how they're making a few changes to traveling in Rise of Kingdoms. You can now travel with gems, which is going to be something. There's going to be windfalls. And then also, if you just want to see the engineering talent trees and a review of the engineering commanders from Heroic Anthem Power Up, just in case the 2 new commanders over here end up with those engineering ranged combat talent trees, that card will be in the end screen right over here in just a second.